Welcome to the League of Women Voters of Lexington's Community Forum, ONE Lexington. I am Mary Hughes, co-president of the League of Women Voters Lexington, and I am here with the League co-president, Jennifer Jackson. Our speaker tonight is Devine Carama, director of ONE Lexington, who will tell us about ONE Lexington's activities designed to engage teenagers and young adults in Lexington. The program is working to increase after-school activities, work opportunities, and a whole range of services targeted at teenagers and young adults in an effort to decrease violence in our community. Mr. Carama is a Devine. Mr. Carama is a hip hop artist, an adjunct professor at the University of Kentucky, and a longtime Lexington activist. We believe this program is a follow-up to some of the needs identified in the Mayor's Commission for Racial Justice and Equality. And now we'll turn the program over to Devine.
Thank you so much, Mary, for the opportunity to come and speak. I'm going to try to keep my presentation as concise as possible because I would love the opportunity to answer some questions if that's okay with you. Mm-hmm. And so, because there's so much that we're working on and so much that we're doing. And so I'm going to try to cover as much as I can, but I would like it to be kind of conversational towards the end. Good. And so just a little bit of background about me. Obviously, being a hip hop artist is kind of my foundation to everything I'm doing now. I had about a 10-year independent hip hop career. I'm kind of from the old school of hip hop. And so it was geared more towards community, family, and faith was a lot of the content in my earlier music. And I think around the age of 30, I just kind of got tired of rapping about community and positive stuff. And I actually wanted to get out there and engage. And so around 2010 is when I really started to focus my efforts and passion towards uplifting young people in Lexington. And in 2014, I started my own nonprofit called Believing in Forever, Inc. And we're actually in the middle of our big annual coat drive right now. And so this year is our 8th annual youth coat drive. And so through Believing in Forever, we just tried to uplift young people, kind of encourage them towards leadership through mentoring, community service, and expressive art. And so through that, I spent some time at LTMS as a paraeducator and a mentor. Spent some time at Common Good, which is a faith-based after-school program in the North Lyme area. Spent some time at Community Action Council as a youth service coordinator. And then obviously, I recently took the position as director of ONE Lexington in Mayor Linda Gordon's office to focus on the youth violence reduction program. And so the latter part of my life has been focused on the very work that I've been called to do through ONE Lexington. And so I love this city. I love our young people, and I want to do anything to encourage these young people towards leadership. And so that's just a little bit of my background. So I guess before I get into the work that we're doing at ONE Lexington, does anybody have any questions about my background or anything? Or
Devine, I'd like to know more, and maybe later, if you get a chance, you can put information about your nonprofit or tell us about it in the chat. I mean, you're having a coat drive, so I'd like to know about that, that kind of thing.
Sure. I'll and just to keep it short, and I'll throw the website, or if somebody wants to do it there. I'm not the best at typing while on Zoom. You would think
I can understand.
But
if you tell me, I can type it.
Okay. It is believinginforever.com. Pretty simple. And so we have done mentoring groups for sons of single mothers. We did a big water drive for Flint. We do a big coat drive every year. We do a library in memory of my late daughter. We just do anything to encourage young people towards leadership. And so you can check out the website and see some of the different initiatives that that we do. But maybe towards the end, I'll kind of talk about that more. So I appreciate that. Yeah. So
I
One
have
Lexington,
your slide deck too. Do you want to use that, or?
you could, I think I would feel better maybe just kind of talking, but
Okay.
then if you could share that with the rest of the group, maybe after my just so you all have it. And so that way you can kind of have the details and some photos to go along with some of the stuff I'm talking about tonight, if that's okay. And so One Lexington, I'm not sure how much you all know about the organization, but I believe it started back in 2017, 2018 in Mayor Gray's administration. And so the first person that he tasked with One Lexington was a good friend of mine, Laura Hatfield, who, when I met her, she was the director of Partners for Youth, and really kind of helped me get more engaged, community-wide with my youth programs. And she's now, I think, the new superintendent for Parks and Rec. And so she was the former director. And anybody who knows Laura knows she's an incredible connector. She's just really good at connecting people. And the original mission of One Lexington is to be a liaison for government resources, community partners, and connect those to community members on the ground in order to make our neighborhoods safe. So it wasn't really supposed to be programmatic, but it was more of just a connector, and she did a great job at that. I think where her and I's approach is a little different is my history has just been on the front lines with underserved communities, working with youth who have been in and out of the system. And so I think when I took over as director about 120 days ago, I think my approach has been more hands-on than Laura's was. And so the mission is still to connect resources, but then also I think leading by example, having that community presence on the ground, somebody that is credible in some of these sectors in which we're trying to do our work. And so though we are still trying to build the capacity of others, we do have a few programs that we've created through One Lexington. And I think we're starting to kind of see the impact of those programs already. And so some of those programs, and again, I provided a PowerPoint that will be shared to you all. So you'll be able to see some of the photos and some of the programs that we're doing flushed out. But one of the biggest programs that we have is called It Takes a Village. And so when I came in, I was hired in June. And so anybody who knows this kind of work, working with young people, knows that violence tends to tick up a little bit in the summer months. Kids are out, the streets are thriving, less resources coming from the schools that are available. And so we see the violence tick up. And so the mayor was pretty content with me coming in and taking a few months to just kind of learn the lay of the land. And I told her, I said, I want to learn the lay of the land, but this is an important time. I think at the time we were already at 20 homicides. And so I told the mayor, I said, if, with all due respect, I would love to jump in and get right to work. And she allowed me to do that. And so we created a summer program, a weekly summer program. We started in July, where we took 25 to 30 kids from the neighborhood, primarily the East End neighborhood, all on free and reduced lunch. And we built this summer mentoring program around those 25 to 30 kids. We did everything from computer coding at the University of Kentucky, working with Awesome Inc. We did money management and job preparation. We did conflict resolution. We did hip hop workshops. We took them to a professional studio and allowed them to get in and record some songs. So coupled with some of those life and skill building opportunities, we also just loved on them. We took them to Malibu Jacks. We took them to the Life Adventure Center in Versailles and just kind of exposed them to some things that they hadn't been exposed to. and just kind of wrapped our arms around them. And so that kind of became the model of what we wanted ONE Lexington to provide to those neighborhoods and those communities. And so in August, we decided to extend that summer program into an in-school mentoring program. Same model, except for instead of the kids coming to us, we're going to 5 different schools. We're at LTMS, Winburn Middle School, William Wells Brown, Frederick Douglass High School, and then we're at the alternative school, MLK, Academy of Excellence. And so we bring in different speakers. We touch on different topics. We focus on things that, to be honest, teachers just don't have time to focus on because they are focused on educating and meeting their personal mandates within their classroom. And so we get to focus on some of the other things. So continuing that relationship building and mentoring has been big. And so we've continued that through this first semester. Another program that we started is called the We Are One Poem Program. And just to give you an idea of how impacted many of our youth are with the recent spike in gun violence, when I visited LTMS, and I talked to Sarah Thornton, she's an English teacher at LTMS, about this idea of starting this poem program. When I walked into her, I think it was her 3rd hour class, and there were 30 students in there, and I asked 30 students, how many of you have personally been impacted by gun violence? 28 of the 30 kids raised their hands. And so when you dug a little deeper and started to ask questions like, do you know somebody with a gun? Do you know somebody that's ever been shot? Have you ever heard gunshots in your neighborhood? And you saw about the same ratio. And so obviously as adults, some of us, we have our faith, which we have many years to learn how to navigate. We have long-time friendships. We have spouses and significant others that we can lean on. But a lot of these kids do not have safe spaces in which they can kind of go with their trauma, right? They don't tell their parents everything. Friendships are kind of finicky when you're in elementary and middle school. And so where do you go? How do you deal with this trauma? We wanted this poem program to be an outlet for the things that they've seen. And so we challenged 75 8th graders at LTMS to write a personal poem about the impact gun violence has had on their lives, but then also how can they be a part of the solution to make their community better? And it was so powerful, super, super powerful. We celebrated their poems by, having this big community day with a DJ. Some of them had the opportunity to read their poems. We gave them free books. We gave them free apparel from a couple of local clothing vendors. Got some nice hoodies. I don't know what it is with these kids that wear hoodies all year round, but they love it. And so we celebrated them, but I think the biggest part of that was just them being able to flush out some of these things that they've been dealing with and what they've been feeling. And so this is something we plan on taking to some other schools. Crawford is interested, Morton Middle School, as well as Taste Creek Middle School wants to do the same thing. So again, it's kind of getting our kids involved. And so I know that's a mouthful. Before I continue on with some other programs, are there any other questions that anybody might have about the first couple programs that I mentioned?
Devine, did you say We Are One poem? Is that what the program was? And it was about their personal experiences with gun violence? And
yes, it is called We Are One. And we want them to talk about what they're going through. But the reason we call it We Are One is we are challenging them. How as a community can we come together to reduce gun violence? And so we want to make them a part of, or at least thinking about the solution. And so super powerful, I think. And it is open to boys and girls, kids of all races. And we even challenge the kids who may not have personal experience to gun violence, because in some way, shape, or form, it's going to impact us all. And I think this year has taught us that this issue is no longer isolated in one neighborhood or in one demographic. And so it can impact all of us in somehow, in some way. And so I think WKYT came out and did a great story on it. And we got a few videos and photos. So I would love to share those with you all. But super powerful. And yes, me being a hip hop artist, and obviously my career started in poetry. And to be honest, the origins of hip hop writing come from poetry, from the couplets, the stanzas, the way that we write. And so I actually came in and did a couple workshops with the students to kind of give them, an idea and give them a foundation and structure. And then they took it from there. And so it was a good question. And so, yes, that program is fully funded by the city. Now, I will be honest. I came into my position about a week after the budget was passed. And so ONE Lexington does not have much of a budget. There was some surplus left over from the year before. So we are operating right now in a lot of creativity and partnerships. But I think with the groundwork that we're laying, once the budget comes in 2022, and then also our mentoring program is in the process of getting some funds potentially from the rescue package. And so, we look to expand on some of these programs. And so that's a good question. And so if there's no more questions about that, and please continue to throw them in the chat, or we can always come back. I'll move on to a couple of other deeper programs that we're working on that I think are going to have some major impacts in the years to come, even after I'm gone from this position. One thing that we've created, which I'm excited about, is our Youth Mediation Collective. And so a call that ONE Lexington has been getting an awful lot. And I think because this is something I used to do when I was working for myself, but we're getting quite a few calls from schools and parents requesting somebody to come out and mediate a conflict between two students. Sometimes it could be a fight at school. Sometimes it could actually be two groups, or gang members that are having issues. And we get a call saying, hey, can you come out and use your credibility with these kids to help us mediate these conflicts? And I tell people all the time, gun violence starts way before the gun is shot. And so how can we do the preventative work? How can we get to these kids? How can we minister to them? How can we build relationships with them before a gun is even involved? To me, that's how you reduce violence. And so this mediation collective we created is exactly what that is for. And so what we've done, we have about 15 members of the community, male and female, all with different backgrounds. Some are social workers, some are teachers, some are community activists, but all have been formally trained in conflict resolution. And so oftentimes what happens is when somebody needs help, mediating a conflict, they usually call on the same 3 or 4 people, and I'm usually one of them. And so we're oftentimes stretched thin. Sometimes I might not be the right person to mediate a conflict. If we have 2 students who their first language is in English, then I may not be the best person to mediate that. So that's why diversity within a collective is important. If we have 2 young ladies at Taste Creek Middle School that are having an issue, right? Then maybe Mr. Devine isn't the right person. Maybe one of our lady mediators should go out and work on kind of helping with that conflict. And so we have built this diverse cast of people who are on call. So when ONE Lexington gets a call, we try to deploy the person that we feel would be best suited for that specific situation. And they'll go out to the schools, and these mediations are so layered. It's usually school staff, it's the parents or caretakers, and it's the students. And normally our mediators will talk to the students separately, And then school staff, which usually is mental health specialist, family resource center, we'll talk to the family and kind of see if there's any wraparound services that we can help with. And so we've already had 3 mediations in the last 2 months. And in one of them, life was even being threatened. And so it was that serious. And now, I see those 2 students every week, and they're talking, and they've actually squashed it, and they've gotten to the point where they're not just cordial, but they're friends. And so that's the type of work that we want to do. We want to be close enough to the ground so we can prevent some of this stuff before it happens. And so that's one program that we're looking to build and enhance. Part of that, and this is super important. This is one of the reasons I feel God put me in this position, is because too many times entities, including the city, and I've been very honest with the city, they'll come to a Geo Gibson, a Devine Carama, a Quincy, a Logan, all of these men and women who are front lines, have the connection with the youth. They'll come to us, ask us for our ideas, tell us to bring the kids that we're connected to their programming. And while we're trying to figure out the best way to put it, it's almost like gentrifying our brilliance. It's the best way I could put it. We often get asked to bring kids to places. We get asked for our opinions. We get asked for our programs, but then we don't get paid. And so the same systems, the same people continue to get the money. Meanwhile, they're standing on the shoulders of the experience that we've gained through the years of being on the front lines. One thing I would love to do in ONE Lexington is create a model where when we deploy those mediators, we're giving them a stipend. So they can feed their families with the great and life-changing, and in some instances, life-saving work that they're doing. They are contractors. They are not volunteers. And so that's a model that I really want to build and change through ONE Lexington, is truly valuing all of our great community partners that are on the ground doing the work, and not just treating them as people we can siphon information from and use. And so that's something we're really, really working on. So I'm excited about that. And I guess that's a perfect segue into something that we started a few weeks ago. And this is actually something that we learned from some other cities. And I'm not sure how much you all know, but this violence isn't just spiking in Lexington. And actually per capita, Lexington isn't as bad as what we're seeing all over the nation, but this is a nationwide issue. And so I did my due diligence, and we start studying what are some other places doing, like San Francisco and in Detroit and New Jersey and other places. And one thing we found in our research is that they have this kind of violence intervention meeting every week to discuss any violent incidences that happened the week before. And so let me give you kind of an example of why that's so important. God forbid somebody was shot tonight. Generally, what I would do is I'm on the phone, I'm going to the scene of the crime, I'm calling victim advocate agencies, I'm getting in touch with the family, I'm, in touch with law enforcement, and I'm running around trying to get all of this information to see how we can best support law enforcement, but then also how can we support the victims? How can we make sure there's nothing retaliatory? How can we make sure that this isn't, rival gangs going back and forth? What can we do to make sure the violence doesn't continue to perpetuate? And so instead of me running around like a chicken with my head cut off, what we've built is this collective of people, which includes the police chief, the sheriff's office, the prosecutor, the jail system, victims advocacy, ONE Lexington. And we all talk about whatever happened the week before, So whatever things that I'm usually making 10 calls to try to figure out and navigate, we're able to address in real time because all of those people are on one call or on one meeting. And so we can best serve the victim of a violent incident in real time and address this so it doesn't continue to spiral. And so we're about 4 weeks in, and it has been huge. We've helped families who've been victims of gun violence relocate. We've been able to connect mental health services to juveniles who've been in the home when shootings have happened. You know, there's so much that has been able to happen by streamlining that process. And so that's called our violence intervention group. And so we meet every Wednesday to address what has happened the week before. And so if you don't mind, I'd like to just take one more pause just to give you all an opportunity to ask any more questions. So I think there's just a few more things that we're working on I'd like to share, but just want to make sure there's no more questions. Yes, Mary.
Devine, talk again who is involved in the violence intervention group. You said the police chief and
Yes. So it'll be the police chief. Usually somebody from the police department will give us the information on the case. University of Kentucky Trauma Center, who oftentimes, which is kind of going to be a segue into the next program I was going to speak about called Safety Net. But they're on the call. Victims advocate worker who works with the court system. The prosecutor is usually on that call. A couple street outreach workers are usually on the call. And some of our street outreach workers can go into certain spaces, have certain relationships within the community that others do not, and they are trusted. And so we have them on the call just in case they hear something that they're able to go into the community and do their work through street outreach. And so we try to make it as layered as possible. But then we also have kind of this second tier team, like the Lexington Rescue Mission, Lexington Leadership Foundation, and Urban Impact. And so if we do need a service, then we can immediately reach out to our second tier team that usually can provide that service. So that might be Fayette County Public Schools. That might be New Vista, who's doing a lot of great work when it comes to mental health within underserved communities. And so might be mentors, right, that can respond. And if it involves a juvenile, what school does he go to? Oh, he goes to Lafayette. Well, I have a mentoring program at Lafayette, so we can get him plugged in. So it's literally this wraparound of services to try to support the victims, but to also make sure that it doesn't continue to spiral, because a lot of what we're seeing in Lexington is retaliatory. And so if we can try to get to some of these players early in the process, then maybe we can keep it from continuing. And so it's a great question.
Devine, you
Yes.
said something about street outreach workers. Are those your volunteers or are they from the city? I've not really heard that particular term or been aware.
Yes. And so, and to be honest, I don't think we've really needed street outreach workers in the way that we do now, because I think when the city is growing, there's growing pains. And so I think what we're seeing in Lexington is required street outreach. And so these are not outreach workers that are employed by the city. And I can, and I try to keep their, I try to be respectful and not say their names, if that's okay. But I know through the Lexington Rescue Mission, there's some street outreach workers that we work with. There's some that are front lines on the ground that are volunteers that we work with. And because of kind of the nuanced, balanced position of working with us, but then also, being front lines in the streets, a lot of them, ask that their identity goes unknown. I'm sure you can understand. But I think one thing that we do want is we do want some street outreach workers working for the city. maybe not as connected, but at least somebody that is respected. And I think that that's important because oftentimes in underserved communities, they may not trust government. They may not trust law enforcement, but they may trust these individuals who they have a connection and a relationship with.
Right.
And if we can continue to liaise with them, I think it helps to keep the community safer.
Good. Devine, I don't know if you saw this on the chat, but Marilyn was asking about, do you have employees under ONE Lexington besides you?
That is a great question. And I think Miss Ruth is waving her hand, so I want to get to her next.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry,
so I do not. I have been a staff of ONE up until a couple weeks ago. We did hire a part-time staff, Mr. Larry Johnson, who actually has about 20 years of experience working in government when it comes to violence reduction and substance misuse. And so he's going to be spending half of his time assisting me, but then he's going to spend half of his time working with Amy Baker, who is over our substance misuse program. And so that has been some much needed support. And it's right now, it's a lot of me kind of running around. But also I've been able to lean on some great community partnerships, which really is what the mission of ONE Lexington is about. And so I'm learning to work smarter, not harder. And so that's a good question.
You said Ruth had a question, or she was raising her hand.
Yeah.
Ruth?
Have you worked with the Green Dot program of the city?
Yes, I actually got an email from Don today, Runyon. I have my certificate as a bystander trainee. And so a lot of, the violence that we're seeing starts with domestic violence. And so we are looking forward to continue to partner with them. I think the work that they're doing is huge and critical. And so, yes, we are working with them, but we look forward to working with them even more.
Great.
I'm not familiar with that program. What is it called? The Green Dot program?
Yeah.
What do they do?
Yeah. So Green Dot, and I don't want to misrepresent their organization, but they focus primarily on conflict resolution, but more they're focused on domestic violence. And so she's been doing a lot of great work. She's been doing bystander trainings. She also does conflict resolution. She also bridges the gap of the layered ways and how domestic violence and gun violence are connected, even if not directly. And so she does a lot of great work in raising awareness. And so we look forward to working with her. It's a really good organization.
Yeah, sounds like it. Great.
And so if there's no more initial questions, I know we're approaching 7:40. So I would love to close up by mentioning just a couple more initiatives and programs. And one, I think, is the perfect segue. There's a program that's really kind of ingenious and that will be kind of passing off to the Lexington Rescue Mission, but still working with them in this capacity. But it is a program called Safety Net. And so Safety Net is a program where we work with UK Trauma Center. So when a gunshot victim comes into the hospital, Safety Net is designed to provide support for that victim. But oftentimes victims come in and they don't want to talk to hospital staff. They don't want to talk to police sometimes. And so, but they want help. Who do they trust? And this is where street outreach or my reputation within the community comes into play. And so the social worker at the hospital, only at the request of the victim, because I think there's certain laws that keeps us from reaching out to gunshot victims, right? They have to actually reach out to us. And so the social worker and the hospital staff is so important. If they can get us connected with those victims, then we can provide support for those victims, which may be helping them move and relocate. Sometimes it is a young man who's involved in gang activity and gang life and feels like he can't get out. So we would connect him with a gang prevention group. And there's a great one here in Lexington called MAID. And they do a lot of great work in Fayette County public schools and beyond. Sometimes you get a kid who lives in a single mother household and is struggling without a male presence in his life. Well, we get him connected to a mentoring group that specifically focuses on sons of single mothers. Sometimes you have a mom in the household whose son was just shot, and she's struggling with mental health. And so we get her connected with mental health specialists. Maybe they need a bill paid. Maybe mom needs help finding a better job to get them out of certain situations. Safety net is kind of those wraparound services around gunshot victims and their families. Because Lexington is still, even though it's a city, it's still kind of like a big town. And so you would be surprised how interconnected a lot of these violent incidences are, and the emotional toll it takes on a lot of families in Lexington. I think the most heartbreaking thing when you look at the statistics this year, because African Americans only make up about 14% of the population in Lexington. And all of us, pretty much the origins of African Americans in Lexington come from the same two neighborhoods, Charlotte Court in the West End, Bluegrass Aspendale housing projects in the East End. And so all of us through the generations are so interconnected. So, when there's a gunshot victim, it's not just impacting that immediate family, it's impacting the extended family. And because Lexington is so small and the African-American population is so small, it usually impacts quite a few of us. We're connected somehow. And so we're at 32 homicides. And I believe 29 of those 32 homicides are African-American males. So just imagine the trauma that is continually being felt within the African-American community, the city at large, but especially within the African-American community. And so I think that, focusing on our victims, providing those resources, providing that help and support, I think it is crucial in keeping the next violent incident or retaliatory incident from happening. And so safety net has been huge in that. And so there is so much we could talk for hours about different things that we're doing, but I would love to close before we do maybe some Q&A if you all are okay with that. But I would love to kind of close on a high note. We have connected with Galls of Lexington, and I'm not sure, Galls over on the north side, they do a lot of the uniforms for public safety. For police officers and firefighters and a lot of their equipment. And so we're going to be creating a scholarship opportunity for seniors at Bryan Station High School called Be the Change Scholarship Competition. And this is specifically and intentionally focused on Bryan Station seniors who want to pursue a criminal justice degree. And that could be public safety, being a police officer, firefighter, but it could be forensic science, it could be pre-law, and this is focused and geared towards minority students. And this kind of goes into what we saw in 2020, a year that I think has impacted all of us, not just with the pandemic, but with the social unrest. And through that social unrest, I think we saw some of the disparities within our society, which is what led to Mayor Gordon's Commission on Racial Justice. And one thing my mom has prided in me ever since I was young was you can complain, you can also engage in peaceful protest, but nothing will make a difference like going out and being the change. And so when we talk about the justice system, there are huge disparities and minorities within the justice system. And so, again, I think we need to talk about it. I think it's a valid conversation, but the true way to change that is just to be that change. And so we believe this scholarship opportunity will encourage more minority students to be a part of the justice system, because there is no diversity like diversity. And so we are super excited about this. We're going to be kicking this off in 2022. This is going to be a $20,000 scholarship annually. This is a game changer, a generational shifter. We didn't want to do just a $5,000 scholarship, a partial scholarship. We want to be able to change a student or two students' lives. And we believe we're going to do this. And obviously, if you get a chance to talk to Chief Weathers, it's been a rough couple of years on law enforcement. I think we're 80 or 90 police officers short in Lexington. And so the police chief, is trying to recruit not just more people to join the force, but he would love even more diversity. And so these are the type of things long-term, when we're thinking long-term solutions that we think will change our city for the better. And so we're kind of in the war room, kind of fleshing that idea out. But we look forward to launching that scholarship competition next year. And we're super excited about that. And so, just kind of in closing, intervention is super important. We understand the need for intervention, but we're also focused on prevention. And ONE Lexington's job, and obviously we've had to be creative and a little more programmatic than we like. But once we get the funding that we hope that we get next year, we want ONE Lexington to be more of a facilitator. We want ONE Lexington to build the capacity of other organizations that are already doing the work. We don't want to reinvent the wheel, whether it is MAID or OMAC or Stop the Bleed or Urban Impact, all of these great organizations that are doing work. We want to create a grant program for them. We want to help them get their LLC or their 501c3. We want to build them up so they can continue to do the work that God has called them to do. We want to be the one-stop shop that when people come to us and say, we need help in anything geared towards violence reduction, then we can send them and deploy other organizations to do the work that they're already doing. And so that's the ultimate mission, but that takes great partnership, great support, and we're definitely working towards that. And so I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all tonight. I think it's important that we communicate the work that we're doing, because I know you and the rest of the community wants to know what is being done. How can we help? And I think communicating is an important piece. And so thank you all for the opportunity. I am here for any other questions that you may have.
I have another one. I seem to be the question woman tonight. It seems like to me, Devine, right now you're doing a lot of hands-on and on the ground work, but you're basically saying that you would rather be the umbrella group, am I understanding, to help all these other groups provide the specific services for you?
That is it. We and this is and a lot of times when we think about disparities, I think we think of the worst things, right? We think of racism and hatred, but it's not always about that. But I'll give you an example. When the government has an RFI or a grant opportunity, a lot of those opportunities don't trickle down to minority directed or ran organizations that are actually on the front lines doing the work. Or these organizations don't have the capacity to facilitate an opportunity like that. They're doing good work, but they don't even know what a 501c3 is. They're doing good work, but they don't know how to do their taxes. They're doing great work, but nobody in city government knows who they are. I want ONE Lexington to amplify those organizations, because those are the organizations. I love United Way. They're great partners. We love some of these big, well-known organizations that usually get these grants and opportunities, and we love the work that they do. but we can't forget about these smaller organizations that are a little bit more community connected. We got to build the capacity of them. And that is exactly what I would love ONE Lexington to do.
Sounds great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds wonderful and needed. Thank you. Do we have some more questions? There's something in the chat, which I haven't looked at. Oh, it looks like Maureen.
This is a small question, but I used to be a high school teacher and retired. And when someone is injured or dies, the students really need a grief group. And I know it's really difficult sometimes if you don't have a really strong person in your school or wherever to come up with someone that can come and help your students. When a student dies, do you, from violence, do you have somebody that can go to the school and do that for the friends of that student?
That is a great question. And so Fayette County has something, I don't want to say the wrong name. I'm not sure if it's called Helping Hand. But they have this new program at Fayette County Public Schools that actually kind of reaches out and creates spaces for students to talk about or be there for students whenever a fellow student or peer has been shot and killed. Another thing that we do, and this kind of goes into what I was saying about capacity building, is that, there are so many organizations that are working independently of the city that are already doing great work. And so a lot of times, to give you a prime example, we had an unfortunate incident over the summer where there was an accidental shooting in a house and a student got shot. And 3 students that were present all attend the same school. And so there's also a mentoring group that facilitates a group that talks about things like this already at the school. So sometimes it's a matter of just getting those students plugged into something that's already ongoing. But then also Fayette County has their own programs that they're facilitating. And I believe they have 24-hour dispatch now with mental health specialists, primarily for juveniles. And I think that that's big. And so it can even start at the scene of a shooting, as early as the scene of a shooting. They can wrap some support around some young people.
Oh, I really appreciate what you're doing for children, especially teenagers. I can't believe in 120 days you have done this much. I really am amazed. You're outstanding.
No,
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
No,
God gets the
thank you.
glory. I love the work. Thank you. I appreciate that.
No, thank you.
What can the average Lexington resident do to support ONE Lexington? You all are on the ground and taking the midnight calls, and I'm asleep in my bed. So, what can we do practically to support your mission?
And I'm actually, oddly enough, because I'm just kind of this glass half full, kumbaya type guy. And I just believe that it literally takes all of us. All of us have a part to play. And so I'm actually working on a document that I can send with some low-hanging stuff and some things that all of us could do. But just to give you an example, right? I had mentioned earlier that violence starts way before the gunshot. Even if it's just volunteering at a local elementary or middle school to be a hall monitor, even if it's going to an elementary school and reading. Each week we go out, we do neighborhood walks in some underserved communities, and we deliver food bags. But I had put out a request last week. We haven't got any yet, but for people to create some positive, inspiring notes to accompany those food baskets, right? They don't even have to let people know it's them that wrote it, but just something to kind of make people feel good when they get their food basket, right? We're feeding their bodies, but maybe something to feed their soul. That's something that the average person could do. And so I believe there's a lot of ways to be a part of the fight. And so my job at ONE Lexington is to identify what those ways are and communicate those to people like you that have the heart and want to help. And so I am working on something. It's going to be like a PDF, something that I can send out. And then also each week I have a newsletter. It's just a weekly update of what we're doing through One Lex and our community partners. And sometimes we have opportunities to serve and help there. So maybe if I get your all's emails, I can loop you in the weekly update and you can just kind of see what we're working on. But that's a great question. And I'm working on that.
Great. I think, I mean, I personally would like to be on your email list, and I'm sure there's other people that would too. Of course, I know that I can probably email you and ask you to put me on your list since I have your
I
email.
got you.
I'm already on it anyway.
Could we email Jen, or could we put it on Outreach Circle, how to get signed up with the letter, Jen?
You would just need to send it. And somebody just mentioned, is there a sign up on the website? That has been one of my, most challenging things is, government works slow. And I'm impulsive and I'm always ready to go. And so I've been trying to get them to maybe make some adjustments on the website. And so that's a request that I can make. But for now, I actually send the email out myself each week. And so if I could just get who's ever email, or Miss Mary, you can share it and just shoot me an email and I can add you to the list. But then we are going to kind of get another way where you can just sign up through the website. We're working on that.
Let me put my email.
I guess I can put mine in the chat. See if I can do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we could use Outreach Circle to help with things. Like we could put out a call for people to write inspiring notes. If you like, how many notes are you talking about? Are we talking like 50?
So
200?
Yeah, we usually do about 50 a week.
50 a week.
Yeah, we serve. We pass out. We partner with Food Chain, with Black Soil, and we pass out about 50 food bags a week. Every Wednesday is usually when we do them. And we put other things in there, neighborhood association meeting flyers, free tutoring flyers, just other little tidbits. But it would be cool to just have some positive messaging too.
Well, I'm going to write a follow-up on this program for our email for our Lexington voter, which comes out once a month, the league voter. And I can ask people to contact me also, with their emails if they'd like to receive your newsletter.
Okay,
and
be great.
I can just give those to you. That would be good. And I just put mine in the chat. Yeah. Devine, I know that when we had the mayor and the two co-chairs of the mayor's commission on a program in early 2021, afterwards we were talking and there were so many wonderful steps that they hoped Lexington could take, to improve in all these areas. And so the league had said basically that we really want to do some follow-up on these kinds of things. And we hope to maybe have some programs in coming months, like we're going to do one on housing and, those kinds of things, just to see what is the progress, And sure. I know to me, One Lexington is a big part of the whole youth thing. Just after school activities, more jobs in the summer, all those kinds of things. So, I mean, that is what we are trying to do.
Well, I think that's great. That kind of accountability the system needs. They need people like you all that care. And I tell you who a great person would be to reach out. We just hired a young lady from Cincinnati, but she spent some time here. Name is Tiffany Brown. And so I would reach out to her. She has been hired specifically to implement the remaining of the mayor's recommendations that were made by the commission.
Mhm.
That's her primary position. She was just hired. She got hired at the same time as Larry Johnson. And so she has done some great things with the Urban League in Cincinnati. She's an evangelist. She's a preacher. And so she's just a great person. And so I think she would be great to connect with, maybe on some
Yeah.
follow things you all are doing. She'd be a great person to talk to.
And we could find her through the
Oh, yeah.
government
Yeah.
website and everything. Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's good.
Mary, this is Joanna. Can I go back and ask Corona about the notes? Do they need to be on like index card, or do you want pretty little thinking of you cards or notebook paper? How do you want those notes to come to you?
Literally any way you want. I try not to stifle people's creativity. The bags that we pass out are about as big as a small gift bag. It's usually some non-perishable items. So it just in any way. It could be an index card, it could be a little note. If you want to be fancy with it, that is fine. Just whatever is on your heart, but just something we can slip into the bags, and you can drop those off. You can mail them, or you can just drop them off at the government building downtown and just address them to me, and then they'll come directly to me. And if you want to sign your name, if you want to tell people you're praying for them, that is completely up to you. But I just didn't want you to think you had to. And so we're open to whatever you want to do with them.
Okay. So the newsletter, when we start getting that, Devine will give us some action things that you need help with, or whatever. To also, is that right?
The newsletter is generally for an update, just to
Okay.
say, hey, here's what we're working on. But I give you a prime example. They're doing programming at Dunbar Center, Community Center, and they're having free tutoring. But sometimes they need tutors. Sometimes they need help with programming. And so I always put that each week,
Good.
opportunities for things that you could do. And some weeks
Good.
it won't be a lot, but some weeks it will be. Yep.
Okay, that's good. That's really good. That's good. Do people have some more questions?
I have a comment. I just want to say I really appreciate the work that ONE Lexington is doing. And, it crossed my mind. I'm a pediatrician. I worked as a general pediatrician in Atlanta. And, so I'm all about prevention, and preventing gun violence is great. And I had a kid one time I saw, and he was coming in for a follow-up for his gunshot injury. And, and it's like, I wanted to talk to him about his social situation, or kind of prevent those things. But it's like, I couldn't handle that in my office in 10 minutes. And yet if I had known, but I didn't know resources in our community that I would have been able to tap into. And so I think it's, if I could only cross over Jen from 15 years ago in that office, seeing that patient to now. But so anyway, I think this is really a great service that Lexington has. And I'm really happy that you are doing all of this work to bring these resources together and let people know about how we can support kids.
Great.
Thank you.
I may go ahead, if there's no other pressing questions, and just do the closing so that I can tell people some more information. But we thank you so much for your wonderful presentation tonight. I know you've given us information which is valuable to the community members and groups. And I know that the League is going to be watching to see your progress at ONE Lexington over the coming months and years. And we may need to write some letters and make sure you all get some more money
Yes.
for your programs. I want everybody watching tonight to remember to tell their family members and friends about tonight's program. And they can view the recording on our website, lwvlexington.com. Look for community forums under the programs menu. And we hope to see many of you when we begin our new year of community forums in January 2022. And again, check our website, or Outreach Circle for coming events. If you aren't familiar with Outreach Circle, it is an app you can download to your phone so you can be one click away from taking action with the League of Women Voters. Download it for free on either the App Store for iPhone users or the Play Store for Android users. Remember that Outreach Circle is one word. Search for Kentucky to join both the Lexington and the state leagues outreach circles. Thank you everybody for being here. Devine, wonderful program. You're doing outstanding things for people in Lexington. There's one more thing in the chat. Oh, Jen is talking about Outreach Circle, and she's given that site, so that's good. Thanks so
Yeah,
much.
we might
for
be
your
able to post
time.
things like we need inspirational cards to you know, to put in bags that are going out to people's homes. So yeah, so we could definitely help like spread the word on those types of things. So download your app so we can keep you up to date.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Devine. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Go Big Blue.